Hey guys, Jen, Olivia. Now, Jen and Olivia, what time is it in California?
It's 2:02 a.m.
All right.
Yes.
And me being from California, it's two. Oh, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning for me too, in my head. But thank you so much for coming to today's presentation. The presentation is about community colleges as an affordable and accessible pathway to higher education. And we're just going to go ahead and introduce our panel. So we're going to start with, go ahead, Olivia.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever everyone is. My name is Olivia Liu. It is my pleasure to be here at the IC3 conference, so thank you so much for having me. I'm the current director of international students at Pasadena City College. I'm going to pass it on to Jen.
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to be here and nice to see everyone. My name is Jennifer Brook. I'm the Executive Director of International Student Programs for Foothill and De Anza Colleges, also in California. And Chris?
All right, thank you. So my name is Christopher Toribio. I represent Orange Coast College, a two-year community college located in Costa Mesa, California. I oversee international admissions and outreach and recruitment. I'm also the current president of the International Association for College Admissions Counseling. It is the largest professional organization for college counseling, specializing in students wanting to go and cross borders for their undergraduate degree. So I know some of you are members of our organization, so thank you so much. And I'm going to just talk about real quick before we dive into today's presentation, the two things that we have in common, the three of us actually. Okay. One is that we're all born in the 80s. Okay. And number two, the three of us actually started working for four-year university. So I just wanted to put that context out there. We spent a big parts of our career working for other four-year universities, myself at UC Riverside and the University of Hawaii, Olivia at UCLA, and Jen previously at Hawaii Pacific University. But I'll be perfectly honest, I'm going to just speak for myself. Working for a community college has really transformed the way that I see higher education in a way that I could never see myself ever working for a four-year university again. I think a community college does answer a lot of our questions and a lot of the concerns in higher education in terms of access, affordability, and I think a lot of students really need to consider this as an option for their undergraduate degree. In fact, 50% of American students at some point in their undergraduate studies, or even after their undergraduate studies, will touch a community college at some point. So I just wanted to lay that context out there. But yeah, let's go ahead and play the presentation, and I'll have Olivia kick it off. Olivia, you ready?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
If you guys could pull up the presentation on the screen, or should I pull it up? Because I'm not sure if there are folks here in the call that may be virtual as well. Do we need to pull up the presentation or?
I think they're gonna do it.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay.
Let me know when it's up so that I can see it.
Okay. It's coming.
All right, no worries.
Okay.
I mean, we're so excited to be here. Take a moment to really appreciate this, everyone, to be able to do this across the world, and also in two types of settings, in a virtual and in-person setting. That, to me, that blows my mind away. But anyway, with that being said, again, my name is Olivia Liu. I'm so excited to be here together with two of my colleagues, Chris and Jen. Both of these colleagues we've known each other not only professionally, but also as friends over many years. So I'm very, very glad to be presenting here at the SC3 conference with all of you. And like Chris mentioned, it is a pleasure and a privilege to be talking about community colleges as affordable pathways to higher education in the United States. And today there are really three learning outcomes for this session. We're hoping that you will learn about the U.S. community college system and its 2+2 transfer model, discover the advantages for students starting at a community college, and finally, understand why California community colleges stand out in degree transfer and professional training options. Community colleges in the United States were really created with two missions in mind. One is access, and number two is flexibility. That means that no matter what stage our students are in, or how old they are, whether they have an advanced degree or not, there is a place for them to start at a community college. One of the important things about community colleges, if we can go back to the previous slide, is called the 2+2 model, or the formula. And it's actually one of the most well-known advantages of community colleges. So many of our viewers are probably familiar with U.S. higher education in that a bachelor's degree, it's typically 4 years in the United States. In India, it might be a little bit different, right? 3 years or 4 years, depending on what kind of route a student chooses. It could be even 5 years, right? But in the United States, it's typically about 4 years. And students who start at a community college following a 2+2 model are typically completing the first 2 years of their degree, of their 4-year degree at a community college, then transferring and completing the final 2 years of the degree at a 4-year university.
There's no
And
way
one of
that
the
you can
great
put her
things
up there too, or
and one of the great things about it is that students starting in the first 2 years are completing their what we consider general education, or their foundation, or pillars to the bachelor's degree. This is at the heart of what is considered a liberal education in the United States, where our students are able to get training in a variety of subjects, from arts, social science, writing, humanities, math, and science. Next slide, please. And earlier, I kind of spoke about access and flexibility, right, of community colleges, and really access is at the center of all of it. That also equals to not only access in terms of where our community colleges are located. In the United States, there are roughly about 1,500 community colleges all across the United States, right? But it's also about enrollment. That means that most community colleges have year-round admission, so it's very easy for our students to apply. There's also accessible admission requirements. That means that typically most community colleges have no SAT or ACT requirements. There may be some English proficiency test score requirements depending on what country most students are coming from. And also there are very minimal grade point average requirements. Again, it's that access and flexibility in mind. We want to support students no matter what stage of their lives they are in. What is most important about community colleges is that it also offers a fraction of the price in terms of tuition that most students will typically pay when they start at a 4-year university. So I don't mean to maybe exaggerate, but the tuition and cost starting at a community college is almost half, if not even less, than what a student would pay if they started a 4-year university. Next slide, please. And I kind of talked about a little bit about this 2+2 model, right? That is really the most famous thing that most community colleges are known for. So you can take a look at how a community college student could start. Chris kind of talked a little bit about it. About 50% of all graduates in the United States typically start at a community college, and there are really different routes that a student can take in order to get to their final goal of completing at a university, right? So, for example, most students can start out at a community college and earn an associate's degree, right? The first 2 years of a degree, and then decide to take a gap year where they can immediately start their optional practical training, or OPT, which is employment-based training that is related to a student's major, get some experience, and after 1 year, they can then, after 1 year of OPT or employment-based training, they can then transfer to a university. Or alternatively, a student could be studying at a community college and not earn an associate's degree. That's perfectly okay too. And then directly transfer to a university and then complete their bachelor's degree. There's also a third route that's actually not showcased here. Some of our students may even choose to just complete an associate's degree and be done, right? And not transfer at all. But typically, the majority of our international students enrolling at a community college will choose to transfer to a 4-year university. I'll pass it on to my colleague Jen so she can talk a little bit more about other options within the community college system.
I think it's Chris is next.
I apologize, Chris.
Okay, no problem. Thanks, Olivia, so much for that overview on community colleges. So Olivia talked about it in terms of what community college offer in terms of the transfer options. Now, what I want to do in terms of educating those about community colleges and the transfer is that transfer is normal. I want to normalize the transfer process. That is just as normal to go to university as a transfer student than applying after high school. Oftentimes, I see professionals asking, what universities can a student transfer to? You can basically transfer to any university because it's normal. So let's remember that. You can transfer to university as common as a student applying directly out of your high school, okay? So you can basically transfer anywhere. But how the transfer process works, it really just is based on what the students has completed at the community colleges. Now, this is a really good opportunity for students who want basically a fresh start. Okay, maybe get into that university that they weren't eligible for right after high school and come to a community college and transfer and just be assessed based on what they completed at the community colleges. And the reason why universities recognize this is because they recognize community college students as university students because they're taking university coursework. Okay. The only difference is that we're able to provide these classes to these students in a more accessible way by simply just applying and enrolling at our school. Okay. Now, course articulation equivalency transfer is designed to be seamless. Okay. Now, oftentimes, there are universities that will sign, let's say, a transfer agreement with a particular university to help a student outline exactly what they need to take from the community college that will transfer automatically to the university. Okay. But a transfer agreement, it is not required for students to transfer in that particular university. Transfer agreements typically happens when there's a student from a particular college or community college applying to a university for the first time. So they could be like maybe the first student from that community college to ever apply to that university. And that's how most universities will keep a transfer database and start building that as more students will apply to that university as a transfer. Okay. Now, transfer admission is typically less competitive than freshmen. So keep that in mind too. Typically, the GPA or the grade point average requirements are not as high as freshmen. Students, again, are typically assessed based on what they completed at the community college. So it's more of an academic comprehensive review of a student's application and not so much holistic. So there's that advantage right there, okay? And we'll talk about specifically California and how the transfer admissions rate are way less competitive than applying as a freshman student. Okay, so again, transfer is normal. You can transfer anywhere for the most part, okay? And if a school does not have a transfer agreement, that's okay. The most important thing, though, is that and I'll talk about this in a little bit, is that the community college is accredited. So I'll talk about that in the next couple of slides. Okay. Now, who is a community college good for? Is it a fit for your student? I always say it's actually a fit for all. Anybody can benefit from a community college because they're just very common in the United States. But I typically tell students as they're going through their college lists, as they're applying, is to do a college readiness assessment to determine how ready they are to go to a four-year university or maybe go to a community college first. So some students will look at a particular university that they want to go to. In California, we have very competitive universities at the freshman level, so oftentimes students are not competitive when it comes to their English proficiency or even the holistic application. So there's some universities that will require, letters of recommendation, personal statements, extracurricular activities, the whole package, and that might not be offered at the school that they go to. Okay, and we provide those opportunities for students. Has the student decided on a major? Okay. If they're unsure, you can definitely explore at a community college. It's a lot cheaper and our classes are a lot more accessible. Okay. So for example, if you go to like a highly selective university, you pick engineering, then all of a sudden, let's say you want to explore and maybe do art. Some universities will require students to reapply for that major, where at a community college, we have these classes and students can just simply sign up. Okay. And also the financial capacity. Okay. Now, I think some of you have gone to that last session about financial aid resources for students. For community colleges, it's really important to have an honest conversation with the student, to have that with the parent, to see how much they're able to afford. Now, what I can say, though, is that where we're not a good fit is for students who need full financial need. That is something that we typically most community colleges do not offer, okay? So just keep that in mind. If a student is full need, zero EFC, likely we won't be able to support them financially at the community colleges. But we'll talk about the cost of attendance because like Olivia mentioned before, it's significantly lower. Okay. Now, how do you choose a community college? Olivia mentioned we have about 1,000 community colleges in the US. I always tell students and counselors, choose a community college like you choose a university. We are not all the same, okay? We have different programs, we have different locations, we have different class sizes, so we're different, so we specialize in very different things too. So look at the student's interested major, the location that they want to go live in. Accreditation, we look at the regional accreditation, and typically, this is what universities will look at a community college to transfer the units as a transfer student. Okay, so look at the regional accreditation. The most important thing I always say is that if that community college has really robust support for international students. Because to be perfectly honest, not every community college has resources to help international students as extensively as others. Now, if there's a community college in India, or that's coming to India to do outreach for students, definitely that school has really robust support for international students because it's a priority at our campuses, okay? But also a quick tip, community colleges are very hands-on in the way that they teach. And oftentimes, some majors are better taken at a community college than a four-year university. Now, that's really hard to believe, but we offer very practical knowledge type of education. So for example, if you're going to study film at a community college, you're going to learn how to make a film. Okay? If you're going to go into culinary arts, you're going to learn how to cook. Okay? If you're going into architecture, you're going to learn how to draft. These are very practical skills. In fact, I often see many university students are taking our classes because we have those resources that they need to have practical knowledge in their field. And oftentimes, a lot of our technical programs are enrolled by students that already have bachelor's degrees. So that's how practical and useful the education that we do offer at a community college. Okay. And what is it like at a community college? Now, there's a big misconception that low-cost tuition means no resources. And that is absolutely not true at a community college. In fact, I'll speak very specifically about California. We are the most funded public institutions in the state of California. We receive more funding from the state than UC and Cal State combined. So we have really great facilities on campus. We have competitive salaries for our faculty, staff, and our employees. In fact, many of our professors also teach at a university, but they also teach at us because, honestly, we pay them more money to do so, okay? So the reason why the tuition cost in California specifically is low is because the state government pays us a lot of money to subsidize that tuition for both our domestic students and our international students. And I know there's a perception that, more money that you pay, the more resources that you get. No, the more money that you pay just means that you're paying more money. Okay, so just remember that. So we're comprehensive. We basically have everything like a university. The only catch is that we don't have bachelor's degrees. Some do, but it's not as comprehensive as universities. So that's the only thing. When people ask me, what is the catch on community colleges? That, well, we offer the 2-year degree only. Okay? We're holistic, so we have clubs, athletics, on-campus housing, research opportunities. In fact, with a lot of our professors teaching at universities, they love to bring those research opportunities to our community college students. We have honors programs that are very robust, really great way for students to take accelerated classes, get involved in research, do internships, a lot of those opportunities, and we're very supportive. The most important thing for community college is our retention. We want students to finish their degree, graduate, and we have comprehensive services. And remember, we're open enrollment. Open enrollment means that we have to have services that can support all different types of students walking into our classrooms. Okay, whether it's disability services, mental health services, returning students after a long gap after high school or secondary school, we're actually the leaders in providing the student support to students because our student body is very, very diverse. Food services, we have food pantries, so we offer free food to our students, free groceries, all these different types of resources to ensure that we have every mechanism possible for them to succeed in their classrooms. That is the definition of equity, and that's what we provide at the community colleges. Jen, you want to talk about the California community colleges?
Sure, Chris. I'd love to do that. Hi again, everyone. My name is Jennifer Brooke. I'm going to dive into, like Chris just said, the California community colleges specifically. As we mentioned a bit earlier, there's about 1,000 community colleges across the United States and 115 specifically in the state of California. So just within our own state of California, there's so much diversity in terms of size of the community college, location, programs that we offer. Even between the three of us, we offer a vast array of programs that are in some ways quite different. And the experience is quite different as well. So there are a lot of options for students. The community colleges in California also educate a large number of students. As Chris mentioned, across the US, about 50% of all high school students actually start their studies towards their bachelor's degree at a community college. In California itself, over 2.5 million students are actually studying at community colleges, so it's not a small number, it's actually quite a large number of students that we're educating. Over 400,000 classes, again, a wide range of subject areas, both practical and more academic-based, and focused programs to community ed and ESL. So again, a wide range of opportunities for students and the community at large. And about half of all students that actually graduate from the University of California and the Cal State system, the CSU system, start at a community college. And this is where community college can be a really great pathway, especially for those students who have expressed interest in the University of California and the Cal States. I'll get into a little bit more about the California Master Plan and what that is, but even just thinking about how it's all laid out and very structured in our state, about 1/3 of all seats for incoming classes at the University of California, for example, is reserved for transfer students specifically from California community colleges. So that gives you an idea about how important an emphasis there is on transfer within the state and the system. And that is open to both domestic students and international students. I know there's a misconception that sometimes these advantages don't necessarily apply to international students, but many absolutely do, and I want to make that clear. I'm going to dispel some misconceptions here as well. A lot of people believe, and I, just being very transparent, was one of them way back when, that those who attend community college might not be the most successful in their future endeavors, or might have to work extra diligently or extra hard in their studies or their work life to be successful. And that's absolutely not the case. I know all three of us have had international students and domestic students that have crossed paths and come through our offices that have been extremely successful in all areas of their lives. We've highlighted some famous people that have come through community colleges, everyone from Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, graduates of De Anza College, so I know about them very well. George Lucas, Star Wars director, of course, Paul Frank down in Orange Coast, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the names go on. And so we've kind of highlighted famous examples that you've probably heard of, but community college graduates are successful in many different facets of life: business, politics, arts, design. And so it really does not have any indication of how well someone might do in reaching their future goals. Again, as Olivia mentioned at the beginning of our presentation, it is primarily a 2+2 program for most students. And so with those courses, they're basically the same curriculum, same subject matter, just in a smaller environment than as a student would have at a four-year university. So they're receiving the same instruction and content as they would at a four-year institution. It's just a more supportive and smaller environment in which they're receiving the instruction. Okay, next slide. Okay, so let's dive into what makes California so unique and how it works for transfer, because I know this is a question that comes up quite often, and this is another concern that many parents have and counselors have when they're recommending community colleges to their students or to families. And that's a question of, okay, so and recommended a community college, what happens after 2 years? How can I feel confident that the student will actually move on and complete their bachelor's degree or complete their goals, whatever that may be? So when we're talking specifically about the 2+2 program leading to a bachelor's degree, in the state of California, there is this legislation called the California Master Plan for Education, and it was actually drafted up in the 1960s. I don't need to bore you with all the details, but essentially what it means is it basically created the public system in the state of California. And the public system includes the University of California, the California State Universities, and the California Community Colleges. And the California Community College's role, not only for access and to educate the public, but also to feed into the CSU and the UC system. And so as part of this master plan, there was developed basically the pathway into the four-year degree granting institutions. And with that, there are guarantees put into place. So for the University of California, there's a TAG, the Transfer Admission Guarantee. And the TAG agreements are for 6 of the University of California campuses, and it's very early/late. So I'll try and remember all 6. It's UC Santa Cruz, UC Davis, Irvine, Santa Barbara, Riverside, and Merced. Those are the 6, right? Okay, Olivia, okay, good, I got it. I got the nod of approval there. And so those are the 6 that have the TAG agreement. Now, that doesn't mean that students can't apply and can't be accepted to the other 3 undergraduate UC campuses. Absolutely, they can apply and be accepted to those campuses. But what the TAG agreement does is essentially if the student follows the pathway and takes the courses that they need within their major and gets the GPA that's required, they're guaranteed admission to those campuses. There's also a website for both CSU and UC that's very useful. I'll put it in the chat in a moment, where even before the student starts at the community college, they can actually look up the community college they want to attend. So say they want to attend Pasadena City College and they want to study biology, and their future goal is to transfer to, I don't know, UC Riverside. And they can actually plug all that in, and assist.org is the website, and it will tell the student exactly the courses they need to take in order to successfully complete that TAG agreement. So this is very transparent, there's no surprises, and as Chris mentioned earlier, there's a lot of support for students with during this process. So we all have counselors that help students stay on the right track with their education planning, and a transfer center that helps students with resources to find a good fit university if they're not 100% sure. So we do offer all those different things as well. And then with the CSU, there is the ADT, so the Associate's Degree for Transfer. So it's the degree with a guarantee. That's the fun name that they come up with that. And so basically, it's if the student completes an associate's degree, they're guaranteed admission to any one of the 22, well, there's 23 CSU campuses, but 22 participating CSU campuses. Now, they don't necessarily choose which one in this case, but they're guaranteed admission, and then they can apply, obviously, to the others as well if they would like to do so. And then there's the UCLA TAP program, which is the Transfer Alliance program. And so another benefit of the community college, again, we talk about access and affordability and academics, and how academics are not necessarily lower just because it's a community college. Many community colleges also have very robust and very challenging honors programs. And so within the honors program, many of us have the TAP agreement with UCLA, which gives preferred admission to students in our honors program to UCLA's College of Letters and Science. And so it's an additional boost for the students' admission. And just to give an example from Foothill College, in some of the majors, our students have about an 85% acceptance rate. Now, That's not guaranteed, it's not 100%, certainly not, but if you compare that to freshman admission, that is a huge advantage. And plus they're already comfortable with the US educational setting, they've saved money, and they're able to get a degree from a very good institution. Chris also highlighted earlier how the freshman admit rate versus the transfer admit rate is quite different. And it is much easier to get accepted to many of these more selective universities by going to a community college first and transferring. And so for the University of California, it varies by campus, but there's a quick example right there. Just generally as a system, it's about a 17% acceptance rate as a freshman coming directly from high school versus it goes up to over 44% as a transfer student. That's general across, the whole system, and that will fluctuate based on the campuses and also based on tag and the top that I talked about. Now, I talked specifically about California and our California master plan. I just want to reiterate, though, what Chris said earlier. It doesn't mean that the students can only transfer to an institution within California if they come to a California community college. They can transfer to private universities in California. We have many students who choose that route. And all three of us have many, many students who also choose to transfer out of state or even out of the country. We've seen a lot of popularity with our students, at least in my case, and maybe Chris or Olivia can talk a bit more to this later, but to Canada, to Australia, to Japan, the UK, and so we've had students kind of come for the experience here in California, get classes that maybe are not available to them in other countries or their home country, and then expand their horizons out to either another state or another country, or back to their home country even after completing an associate degree. So that's all certainly possible as well. And then finally, again, talking about the affordability of community colleges, I know we've talked a lot about this already, but if you just take a look at how much money the students and the families can save, you can see that there is a lot of value. There's a high value proposition by starting at a community college. If you compare it to a private institution, again, Olivia mentioned, it's less than half the cost in many cases. And when you're thinking about and talking to families and students, it's really the ROI, right? At the end of the day, the student is still getting their degree and from a great four-year institution. There's no negative connotation or negative mark on their transcript or on their degree that they did 2 years at a community college at all. So that's not a concern when they go out to apply for a job or for graduate school or a graduate program. Their transcript, their final degree is from the four-year institution. So I just wanted to make that clear. So it's especially good not only for students that are concerned about affordability but still want the opportunity to study in the United States, but also for students who might be entering a professional program in the future or considering, I know it's often far in the future for many students, but if they're considering, for example, an MBA program or a master's or a PhD program, this can save a lot of money that can be put towards those other higher professional degrees. So with that, I don't know if Chris or Lynn, you had anything they wanted to add, or I know that some of you may have questions for us, and we'd be more than happy to answer those for you.
Oh, yes, now that actually ends our presentation. So we're going to go ahead and take some questions from the audience. So, yeah.
Actually, I have a couple of questions.
Okay, go for it.
Can you also
for the screen for that?
So initially you were talking about regional accreditations which we need to check. So I just need clarification of that one thing. And one more thing, just give me a sec. Yeah. Honors program you mentioned, but honors program are usually for 4 years, right? And your community college you just have for 2 years. So how does that honors program, merge with this? So I just need on this two. And the third one, if possible, So you mean 2 years? That 16,600 is usually the cost for the 2 years. So then they transfer to some other university. So whatever university fees is there for next 2 years, 32,000 or something, 87,000 you mentioned. So that they need to pay for the next 2 years. All right. So
Good question. So 3 questions, 3 people. So who wants to take the accreditation question? Chris will do it then. Okay. So the accreditation that I'm referring to is the same as universities in the United States. So for the West Coast, it's WASC, the Western Association for Schools and Colleges. So it's the same accreditation body as the universities. So look for that. There's a website called CHEA, CHEA, that you can look for. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's pretty much straightforward. It's on the websites for a lot of these institutions, but you can do other further due diligence by checking that CHEO website. The next question had to do with honors programs and how does that work at community colleges, because we do offer them. So Olivia, Jen? Olivia?
Sure, I can take that one. So in India, typically, I think honors programs are 4 years long. In the United States, the concept is slightly a little bit different. Honors courses and being part of an honors program usually requires that a student take more advanced classes, perhaps sometimes be attached or be assigned a research program. There are also grade point average components where the student needs to meet in order to stay in the honors program. So slightly different than what your concept would be in India. And so for many of our students who choose to be at a community college and participate in an honors program, you're correct, it's typically 2 years or during the length or duration of how long a student is going to complete a degree. Like I mentioned, this whole 2+2 model, it's quite common in the United States. Students do the first 2 years at a community college, but it is quite possible for some students who love the community college system so much that it can take them more than 2 years. In certain majors, perhaps if a student is not completely sure, they switch their majors halfway, it could take them a little bit longer than 2 years. So for a student to be in the honors program, and I think as it relates to their competitiveness eventually when they transfer, Jen talked a little bit about the UCLA TAP program, but most importantly, if a student chooses to be in an honors program at a community college, it's something that they can sell, it's something they can talk about, and something that their transfer universities are looking to learn more about, because students get not only additional support, but also have a more robust type of curriculum in order to prepare them for particularly research. We see that quite a lot.
And Jen, do you want to talk about the that third question that I forgot what it was? Cost. Yes, cost. Okay.
Yeah, so the cost in terms of the cost of the community college and then when the student transfers. So yes, you were absolutely right. So the cost of the community college would be, we quoted around 16,800. Of course, each community college has their own tuition and fees. So just like a university, so please, have the student do the research on that. But it would be that cost, and then when the student transfers, of course, it would be the cost that the university has. Now, that's just a typical scenario. However, I will say that, that for students that do fairly well at the community college, there are a lot of scholarships available for students who are transferring. So I think Olivia and Chris also provide this as well. So we do have scholarships for students from us for when they're transferring, if they've done well. And then the universities also offer scholarships for transfer students. So again, if there's a student with financial need, we do work with them at the transfer center and our transfer counselors to identify the institutions that do offer either a lower tuition rate, so it's not such a financial shock to the student and family as they're doing the transfer process, or offer scholarships that meet their needs. So yes, the price typically does go up, but there are resources available to ensure that it's more reasonable.
Right here.
Are the financial aid and scholarships applicable for international students also at the time of transfer?
So for transfer students, yeah, it depends on the university, just like everything else. Even when they're applying, for students that are applying from high school, we always say, well, it really depends. So, but many universities do offer scholarships and financial aid to international transfer students. And we do offer, there are many community colleges that offer scholarships, typically in the second year, but not always, to international students as well. So it's available.
I have a really
Like
good.
Chris
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to say, like Chris said, community college is probably not a great fit for students that are full need that absolutely have zero EFC. So students would need to have some financial resources to take avail of a community college.
I have a really good YouTube video of one of our Indian students getting financial aid and scholarships at their university. I'll share it with you guys. So, okay. Who had a question? I'm going to go this way. Oh, EFC.
You're doing a great job.
Oh, thank
Good
you.
job moderating.
EFC stands for, well, now expected family contribution. So,
would a community college be a good option for students with learning challenges? You know, for example, if a student is on the autism spectrum, would it be possible for that student to seek admission in a community college?
absolutely. In fact, a lot of those initiatives in providing, access and equity for students that do have learning and physical disabilities were actually started at the community colleges. So absolutely, we welcome the students, and we do have support for students, to make sure that they're going to succeed in the classroom and other accommodations that they need. So absolutely. Okay, Coach, you want to add anything to that, you guys? No? Okay.
Although you have TAG and ADT as you mentioned, but my question is, if a student is struggling with the academic GPA scores at the end of year 2, so is there any problem while transferring? And if yes, he has problems, how he can improve? Or will he be denied admission, or will he be granted admission?
I'm going to start it off, then you can go ahead and chime in real quick. Just remember this. It is really difficult to not transfer. I just wanted to put it out there. There's so many universities that have actually a lot less stringent requirements for transfers than the California State and the UC system. And typically students that I see that don't transfer are the ones that are unable to transfer for situations outside of their control, whether it's financial or family or life situation. But if you want to go ahead and add to that, you guys go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is, think of it this way, it's different pools of applicants. So you have, most universities will have a pool of students coming from high school or secondary school, and then transfer is looked at as a completely different pool. So for many of your students, perhaps if they choose to, they have a dream school in mind, if they don't get admitted to the dream school in mind, there is a second chance that they can take if they start at a community college. Now, not all students will choose that. I have a lot of students that come straight to community college knowing very well that the financial burden is too high to start at a 4-year university. Now, the reality is that transfer is still competitive, and students can, if they have an idea of what their dream school is going to be, most important thing is that all of our community colleges have support for the students in terms of creating educational plans. And that is the goal of every single community college in California, that every single student has an assigned counselor and has an educational plan. What is an educational plan? The educational plan is basically a roadmap that all community college counselors have to create for each one of our students in order to know exactly what they need to do, and for our case is transfer. So the student knows at every single step of the way what classes do they need to take this semester, next semester. If they've already identified very early on with a college counselor what their goal is going to be, right? If their goal is going to be to go to UCLA or transfer to UC Berkeley for a computer science major or for a film major, these are the classes that they need to take specifically each and one of every semester or term that they're there. It is quite possible, just like as students apply for secondary schools, we encourage students to have a large list of schools that they want to apply to, right? You don't put, as the saying goes, all your eggs in one basket. You want to diversify your pool so that in the event that a student is struggling academically, does not meet, the transfer requirements of a tag, or the transfer requirements of an ADT, there's still options for them beyond that, right? So they're not locked into just a tag school. They're not locked into just the ADT or the Cal State that they wish to transfer to. But on the flip side too, remember what Chris mentioned is that community colleges offer it's a very comprehensive support system, and because we typically are very hands-on, if a student is struggling very early on, if a student doesn't tell us, right, we will never be able to know. But if a student identifies difficulties academically, there is very specific academic support for them in free tutoring services, access to, here at Pasadena City College, we call them coaches too, who are paraprofessionals that help the students improve their first year experience or their second year experience academically so that they can meet the goal of transferring. And so, don't see community colleges as not having that support system. We do have it for the students. Most importantly is as college counselors, you encourage students, no matter if they choose to go to community college or 4-year, encourage them to please speak out, right? Because without them telling us that they're having problems or they need help, we don't know. So it's very important that they reach out to us for help. Jen, do you have anything else to add?
Not really. Like Chris said, it is very difficult to not transfer. I just want to reiterate that. So again, if the student doesn't meet requirements for TAG, somehow they've really struggled in their last last year of study, there are options available for them, and there are counselors there that will work with them to identify those options. I mean, you've had students that struggled in their second year and still have successfully transferred to a CSU or a UC campus. Now, it's not Berkeley necessarily, but it might be, a Merced, or, it's still a great institution, and they're still, moving on to get their 4-year degree with the support that they need to be successful in the end.
I also wanted to clarify, for many of our students, we are their dream institution. So I just wanted to point that out, guys. Okay, you had a question?
I just want to add to what we were saying about community colleges. This is Iyad from Riverside City College. So I want to say that actually all students, 100% of students who successfully finish the first 2 years at a community college, all of them can transfer, but it will depend on their GPA, where they go. So the higher the GPA, the more prestigious the campus. All the way to 2.0 GPA, students can still transfer to a 4-year university. Thank you.
All right, so we have a question in the back. Okay, sorry, you were waiting first, so yeah.
Yes, so hi, Jen. It's very, very nice to see you, even if it's virtual. This is Punita. So my question to you is that, so all 22 California state universities, they participate in ADT. But there are a couple of them who are not participating. So can you specify which are the ones?
The only one that I'm aware of is the California Maritime Academy, which is for students, it's like sailing. It's like almost military. It's up here in the Bay Area, so that's the only one. And typically, we don't have a lot of interest in that particular campus. Now, there's other 4-year institutions if a student's interested in that type of career in the future or that kind of degree that they can go to instead. But that's the only one that I'm aware of that does not participate in that program.
Nice. And how many, do you have some kind of a data that how many students go to countries like Canada, countries like Australia? So can you share something on that?
I don't have the exact number off the top of my head right now, but we do track that information, and we do share that out. It's in our brochures, actually. So we name the specific institution, I think it's on our website too, that our students have gone to. I know the percentage is definitely growing. There is a lot of interest in going to other countries also because of, you know, to be quite honest, some of the immigration regulations, you know, in the years prior to 2020. So yeah, it's not a huge number. I would say for us and Olivia and Chris, I don't know if you agree, a majority of the students remain in California with another decent size percentage going out of state. I would say it's probably, maybe for us, it's under 10% going outside of the United States at this point, but it's definitely a trend and it is becoming more popular.
And visa is not a problem. So,
Visa
like for example, they have US visa, and now if they have to go to, let's say, Canada, now they have to apply for another visa, right? So, is there enough time between the transfers to kind of get another visa, or is that a challenge?
Yeah, so we haven't seen there be an issue. I mean, I'm sure it certainly could be if the student wasn't prepared or following directions, but there is enough time for the transfer process to the university outside the United States and for them to send, for example, in Canada, it's a study permit. So they send that to them and then they apply for the visa. So typically I haven't seen it being an issue and there's plenty of time for our students to complete that process. I don't know, Olivia and Chris, if you've seen any.
I have something to add to that actually. So, in the case, and I've seen this with students who want to go to other countries when they transfer, in the case that they're a little concerned that they may not get the visa for that other country, they do apply to other universities in the US. So typically what the student does is they request transfer of their CVIS record to a US university as their backup, then they'll just not go if they go to a university of their choice outside of the country. So there's that workaround that students can do just in case. Yeah.
Yeah.
And CVIS record is their basically their visa, right? Their status.
Their status.
To another school.
Okay. Okay, we have a question in the back.
Thank you. Hi. Well, I would like to know about the English language proficiency tests that are accepted. And because recently during the pandemic, most of them have chosen the online mode. So can you please elaborate on that? Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. I'll start. So community colleges have so many different ways that students can meet the English proficiency requirement. In fact, many of community colleges were accepting online forms of meeting their English proficiency requirement way before many universities were doing so. So there's some community colleges that actually don't require any English proficiency for their student, or meeting their English proficiency is basically just applying because we have an intensive English language program. But for my institution specifically, there's like 27 different ways that students can satisfy that requirement. But you guys want to elaborate?
Quite similarly to what Chris mentioned. Sorry. Quite similarly to what Chris mentioned, at my institution, we accept almost a majority of the most popular online versions of the English proficiency exam. Like some of the ones that come up, I know TOEFL and IELTS have had their online versions. They're exams that we accept. It's most Duolingo English test. And so whatever is accessible to the student, we usually are very accommodating. For many of our Indian students who have been instructed primarily in English in many of your schools, English proficiency is really not a requirement unless, if your school is instructing in both English and another language, and yeah, we probably will need English proficiency. Jen?
Yeah, we're the exact same. The only other thing I would add is we also will waive English proficiency for students who have done IB or Cambridge, and so that's another way. But yeah, there's many, many different ways of meeting that requirement without having to go and take an in-person test. And I think most community colleges are in line with that, generally speaking.
All right.
Thank you. I just wanted to find out in terms of entry requirements for community colleges, are the grades which are required, are they considerably lower than the other state universities? Is there any difference in terms of grade level in terms of entry requirements? That's one question. Second question is, this same transfer system, does it also exist in other states in the US, or is it specific only to California?
Go ahead and tackle that first. Or I can tackle it.
Sure, I can do it.
Okay.
Okay, those are two very good questions. So, sorry, it's 2 a.m. in the morning. The first question was related to transfer in other states, right? Does it exist in other states? Was that the first question or the second?
That was the second question, but you can start with that. Yeah.
Okay, I'll start with that. I'm sorry, I'm like ping pong, doing ping pong. But yes, the 2+2 transfer model exists in other states, and I think both Jen and Chris already mentioned that some of the students don't always choose to stay in California. They start at a California community college. Some of our students do transfer out to outside of California. It doesn't happen quite often, and not to brag, but California is awesome in terms of weather and diversity, and I think that's why a lot of students end up staying in California. They go to California Community College. But those types of systems also exist outside the state of California. But I would probably have to say that in California, it probably is a more robust system, because there was, like Jen mentioned, the California Master Plan of Education. There was actually a legislation. It was codified. It was created into legislation where it is a very clear system. Some other states might have something similar, but it probably isn't as robust and as strong and as clearly defined as the California community colleges. So if any of your students choose to go to perhaps New York or to Texas, they also have community college systems where they do have transfer options, but it probably isn't as clearly defined. And so students may need to do a little bit more research in terms of what they need to take in order to transfer successfully to a university within that state.
And California is actually taking it even a step further to provide that access. So there's currently a bill that they're trying to decide on to do a standardized course numbering for all 115 community colleges. So it's going to be a lot more robust than it is right now. The second question had to do with admissions and looking at the GPA and the grades for admissions to community colleges. I'll start off, then you can go ahead and chime in. So typically when my team is looking at an admissions for a student, when you submit their transcript, we look at two things. One is that they meet the English proficiency requirement. So we'll use the academic transcript to do that. If that cannot be satisfied, then we ask for tests and other measures that they can demonstrate that. And for most community colleges, at least in California, the student just has to be at least 18 years old and they can enroll, regardless if they graduated or not. Now, if a student is 17 years old and they're by the time of their first semester, then we're going to ask for proof of high school completion. And in India's case, it will be their board exams for the most part. But in terms of an actual GPA requirement, again, we're open enrollment. But the types of academic credentials that we're seeing, at least that I'm seeing at my school, these students are excellent. They could have gone to a four-year university, to be perfectly honest. So I wouldn't necessarily say the majority of my students that are coming to a community college are the ones that have struggled in high school. I'm actually seeing the exact opposite. Is that what you're seeing as well at your institutions?
Yeah. Yeah, and I will say too, for the transfer, because I know that's probably a follow-up question on some of your minds. You know, what if the student didn't do so well in high school, goes to a community college, and then tries to transfer? So in many cases, these four-year institutions are not at all looking at the high school transcript anymore. They're only focused on the college transcript. So for students that did perhaps academically struggle, or something happened in their academic profile at the high school, this really is a second chance for them to do well at the community college, and they can still transfer to a Berkeley or UCLA or whatever institution of their choice. So in most cases, they are not, the admissions officer are not looking at their high school transcripts to make an admission decision for transfer students.
Okay, question in the... Okay, ladies first.
Thank you so much. I just wanted clarity on the fees that you mentioned. Is it 16,600 for 2 years only tuition fees, or does it include living expenses as well? And one more question I had quickly was, what is the path beyond the degree? I mean, in terms of careers, If you could just give some examples.
Good question. So I'm going to answer the first one because I made the slide. So that is an estimated cost for tuition alone. So again, every community college is different, but that's typically what we're seeing for tuition and fees alone for full-time enrollment for basically the first 2 years of their undergraduate studies. So the second part of the question, what are the options outside of just transferring? Oh, the living. Again, that depends on where it is. So I would say for most community colleges in the US, their typical I-20 cost can be as low as 16,000 all the way to under 30. So maybe about 28 to 29. It just really depends on the cost of living mostly and also the cost of tuition and fees. So it would kind of just go around that ballpark. I think for California, it's going to be at least 20,000. It's anywhere from 20 to 28,000 for cost of attendance. Okay.
I can answer the second question. Oh, wait, sorry, what was the second question?
The second question is, what are the options outside of transfer? I love that question, actually.
Great.
Yeah,
You
so,
want to start?
yeah, okay, so I just wanted to share, like, it's actually kind of a microaggression when you ask the student where they want to transfer to or where they're going to transfer to, because it's not the goal for every single student, you know, so some career options, you know, like a lot of our career technical programs are actually geared toward having career in that field. So programs such as aviation, you know, pilot training, you're training to be a pilot, you know, so we have a lot of students doing that. Aviation maintenance technology, 2-year program, make a lot of money. Culinary arts, 2 years, make a lot of money. Film, 2 years, a lot of students get into the industry. So there's a lot of opportunities outside of the transfer, and they can always transfer later. So that's another option too. So you don't actually necessarily have to transfer right after you finish your community colleges. Many students will do OPT, the optional practical training, to get that 1-year work experience, maybe pay off some of the money that they use for community college. And then we have some students that take some time off before they can transfer, and those units never expire. Yeah. Question? Oh, time's up. Our time's up.
I think to add to, our time's up. Just
No.
to end it.
No, it's not. Yeah, you can finish, Olivia. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just to add to what Chris mentioned, like what are career pathways? You know, at the beginning of the presentation, I mentioned community colleges are about equity, about access. And flexibility. And so transfer is not the only route. So there are students. I have a lot of students who are looking for a second career, who have master's and PhD degrees, who want to completely change their majors and, you know, complete an associate's degree, and that's it, right? To get some knowledge in that field, so they can be more competitive in the marketplace. And like Chris mentioned also, there are some programs where if a student chooses not to transfer, they can just end at a community college, and the technical training that students get, like for example, allied sciences, health sciences, are very popular on my campus. Nursing, pre-dental, dental assisting, where these are industries in California which are more in demand. Many of our students will choose to do that and get some experience, and that's it. And so, regardless of what the student's goal is, there is a place for them at a community college.
All right. I know we're time, but we have one more question. We'll try to get to you. Go ahead.
Yeah. My question is like, how difficult is to get visa for a student if he opts for a community college? One. And are the rules different? Like for example, if a student goes for a regular university, they get, I think, permission to work for 20 hours a week. So if he goes for a community college, if he gets a 4-year visa and suppose he studies for 2 years, then 2 years, can he work full time or something like that?
So, well, Dipali actually wants to answer their question, so I'm going to give it to her because she's based here in India. So go ahead, Dipali.
I love to answer questions related to visas. So, hi, I'm Dipali and I represent Futal and Dianza colleges in South Asia. I'm based in Mumbai. I deal with students on regular basis that apply to Futal and Dianza. And it's literally the same process when you apply for an F1 visa. You need to have clarity in goals and plans, and if you can demonstrate that, I think you should be okay. We have a very good visa approval rate, and honestly, the visa also depends on the student's profile, clarity, financial background, etc. So I'd say the fact that we exist, we have international students, and we have good numbers of international students. We have support systems. The consulate is aware. You just need to approach it just like you would approach the visa for any university. You just have to be prepared with your documents and ensure you're doing things correctly in time, and that should be the goal. Also answering your question on working part-time. So a lot of our students, I'll give you examples, at Foothill College and De Anza College do work, and I'm sure it's the same for, my colleagues here. You can work up to 20 hours per week. With Foothill and De Anza, it's up to 19 hours per week. They do work at the library, the student center, etc. So there are opportunities just like a university. It's just, if you have a student, I'd like to sum this up, who wants to start in a more supportive environment, a smaller class size with more accessibility to professors, resources, because everybody may not be the right fit for a big environment, you must look at community colleges. You want affordability in cost, maybe because parents want to, make that as the goal. Look at community colleges. Your student did not get into his dream university, but still wants to give it a second chance, wants to keep options of transfer open to understand where he's going to be the right fit. Look at community colleges. Look at community colleges just like you would look at a list while applying to a university. And trust me, you're going to see so much of diversity and opportunities available. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining in. And we're available to answer any questions at the University Expo down. Thank you.